Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. Mental toughness, it's a huge part of boxing, although it's often something that's either on the periphery of the conversation when we break down the build up to a fight and indeed the fight itself, or in some cases, it's not mentioned at all. I'll come to Huey Fury and Joseph Parker in a moment, but first a quick little preamble with a few thoughts. There's been plenty of examples over the years where a fighter has not had the right mindset going into a fight because of circumstances in their lives outside of the ring, and then they've stepped into the ring and been beaten by lesser opposition. I'm sure many of you can think of one or two examples off the top of your head. For me, a couple of shock losses. I think Tyson and Lewis. Some of those losses they suffered, they fall into that camp. And dare I say, a most recent example, the Horn Pacquiao fight. On the same side of that coin, some fighters get beaten mentally before they even enter the ring because of what an opponent may have said or done. A good example of this, and a recent one that comes to mind, is Gerald Washington and Jarrell Miller. So that fight just happened recently. In the build up, you may recall, a day or so out from the fight, Miller came up on stage and flat out wrecked Washington in a 30-second rant. Washington, at that moment, he looked like a beaten man. He looked like a beaten man. And so it was. He ended up being a beaten man. Miller beat the crap out of him. All sorts of crap was beat out of him that night, and he just looked like he didn't have a game plan. Mentally, he just looked like he hadn't turned up. Conversely, being mentally tough can give fighters an edge, a drive, and what you might call a real but intangible boost. Someone like Evander Holyfield in his sort of heyday, in the 80s and 90s, he was someone, and, he's one of my favorite fighters. He was very mentally strong. And it's certainly in the lead up to that first Tyson fight, it was well documented after the fact that he was dialed in and he was so on point mentally ahead of that fight that it was credited as a big part for the reason that he won. So that brings me to Hughie Fury and Joseph Parker. How mentally strong are these guys? Has there been anything in the build up to their September 23 fight in Manchester that is either going to help or hurt their mental preparation? If we look at Fury first, I think there's a few interesting things that are worth noting. And it's not just me who's noticed some of these things. A few subscribers had a little bit of banter in the comment section of a couple of videos. You know who you are. And they've raised some valid points about things that are going on in the wider Fury camp that could be seen as an unnecessary distraction at best and potentially mentally damaging at worst. It's certainly clear that Huey Fury idolizes his cousin Tyson, and he's talked about the two of them ruling the division for years to come. He's been very vocal about it. In return, Tyson, though, has been a bit lukewarm on it, and Huey hasn't sort of, maybe got the backup that he would have thought he was going to get. Case in point, the Fury Parker news conference. Tyson Fury did not back up Huey for the win, instead basically saying it's going to be a very tough 50-50 fight with Joseph Parker. Not something you were maybe expecting. You'd think he'd be backing him to the hilt, right? And the cherry on top there was he ended up hugging it out with Joseph Parker and expressing all sorts of respect for him. It was kind of incredible in many respects. But it must have been at least a major body blow for Huey, seeing that carry on right in front of his eyes, in front of the news media, and then ultimately in front of the world. But a question I had about that whole thing was, what the hell was Tyson doing there anyway on stage at the table? It was Huey's press conference, not Tyson's, but somehow he found his way up there. And in some respects, you could say that he did kind of sabotage things a little bit. Staying with Tyson, Huey and him are very close. That's obvious. During the past month, Tyson Fury, he's made a number of statements around will he or won't he return to the ring. Peter Fury even stated 3 or 4 weeks ago that they were lining Tyson's return up for Huey's undercard. But immediately, Tyson essentially undermines that and says he may never return. And then a few days later, he follows it up with a cryptic tweet that could only be deciphered as a retirement tweet. Surely, all of that has to act as a major distraction and impact Huey Fury in some way. It would be naive to think otherwise. There have also been some nagging doubts raised about Fury and his general confidence levels. There's a history of pulling out of fights, or fights falling through. I mean, this leads some fans to speculate he's only willing to fight on his terms and when everything is going right and going his way. And I have to say, some of the statements that he made in the early part of the build-up to this fight, they didn't sound credible. Statements about him winning, they didn't ring true. It felt like he was trying to convince himself. But I guess in fairness, Fury has sounded more and more confident as the weeks have rolled by, and when he's been quoted. There's also another open question for me about Huey Fury. Has Huey Fury, in his pro career, ever really been tested in the ring? Has he had to overcome some major adversity? It's very debatable. So how will he respond if put in an unfamiliar situation where he's under immense pressure? It'll be interesting to see. But something that could very well be good for him, and so we'll turn to the positives here, or the potential positives, is that he has set himself up in what I think is a pretty good situation with his camp. It's in the Lake District in the UK, very isolated spot, very few distractions. Stringing together another month with limited distractions, no doubt it will do him the world of good. If Fury is also truly over his pimple-related condition, and he's feeling better, hitting harder, and training like a boss, then no doubt that will have a positive impact on him psychologically. Let's not forget, until this point, Fury has been fighting with that condition and still winning. Also, if Fury is still a little wet behind the ears in terms of his mental game, I'm sure that Peter Fury, his father and trainer, who I have a lot of respect for, will be guiding him and preparing him well. Okay, so Joseph Parker, I would definitely argue he's more of a known quantity in terms of how mentally strong he is. But there's a few things from the past year that, if they did keep occurring in the lead up to this fight in September, could be cause for concern. I mean, Parker's trainer Kevin Barry has been on record of saying that the past two camps have not gone to plan. There's been a few external issues that have interrupted their preparations. These have predominantly been family-related matters, and of course, the well-publicised bust-up between David Higgins and Dean Lonergan, his promoters, who are Duco. Whether there are any similar issues this time around, we probably won't know until after the fight, or if ever. I guess, though, the upside from the distractions that he has had in his past couple of camps, though, he was able to get through a tough fight against Ruiz. He came away with the title. He was able to sort of fight through that, and more latterly against his standard opponent, Razvan Kajanu. Right now, from comments that Parker is making, he does seem in a good state of mind. He does appear to be using some of that criticism that was directed his way in that win over Kajanu as fuel, something that's driving him. He knows he's got to put on a good show, put in a good performance in Manchester. He's certainly spoken about making a statement, knocking Fury out. But I guess the other side to that coin is you can also put too much pressure on yourself and fail to deliver. But like Fury, I'm sure Parker and his team are putting strategies in place to deal with every eventuality to ensure that he is mentally strong come fight night. I guess time will tell. What do you make of this? Anything you want to chime in here? Drop a comment. Let me know your thoughts. Okay, that's it from me. Hit like and subscribe. I'm out.